All right. We should be able to fold back into your...
We live all around the world, which I realized after watching back the Pursuit one. I'm like, oh, we've got to talk as soon as it goes live. It's not backstage anymore. Let's see. There we go. I'm starting to see.
Hey, I think I got the channels going. This will be really interesting to see how this works. Let me see if I can minimize this one. Cheers, what's going on, Wolfpack? Hey, you'll have to...
Welcome to day 7.
Guys, we're trying to do something different, so just say hey as soon as you jump in the chat. We're doing something different. We don't do a whole lot of streaming, and so I had told Blake, hey, I think I can figure this out where it will stream to all of our platforms, which is great. But it did. we have a lot popping up, so let me know where you're tuning in from too. I think we're live on 3 Instagrams right now, and as well as, where is this other man? I'm losing something. We're on 3 Instagrams right now, I believe, and we should be on 2 YouTubes as well.
We've got 5.
All right, Chris Haynes, is Instagram's working?
To 2 people, and here we are.
Dude, going from our last live stream, I told you I won't lie. So here's the deal. Kristen doesn't know this, but I was watching like a vitamin TikTok live this week, and
this is where we're getting our inspiration
from. The QVC was doing everything I was telling you about. Brandon from Pennsylvania watching on AG. Thanks, Brandon, for letting me know where you're at. Looks like we've got Phoenix, Arizona over here. I heard it. What'd you say it was? He said it was like 72 in Arizona. Chris can't believe that Blake's audio is working. I can believe it's working. I had faith in it.
I, for one, am also surprised.
Degenerate Wolfpack's tuning in from Instagram as well. Looks like they're probably over on a
little Jacksonville connection. Okay, I like it.
A separate Instagram. So you would have to monitor your. There's so many chats. There's chats from everywhere. You got chats on chats. Clover Bourbon Bell from Western North Carolina. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
Yeah.
Perfect weather down here. Yeah, man.
Well, I'd say let's do an intro because I'm already seeing people jump in. So welcome everyone. This is the Advent calendar day number 7. And so if you're not following along with the Advent calendar, you probably have if you are following along, you probably have your sample already. This is the Beyke's Blue. So this is where I get to kind of reverse the roles on Brian a little bit. And while we typically jump on here and talk with all the different brands on the Advent calendar, what they made, what their product is, what's the story behind their brand. I have the added advantage of we get to talk about all those things. But if Brian doesn't, if he tries to be a little more humble than normal about what Beyke's Blue is, I get to dive in a little more and ask more pointed questions. So it's a little more of a, fun behind the scenes story of a brand, and kind of a good lead up. So if you follow the Seelbach Sunday Review email, you'll know that Beyke's Blue Double Oak is coming out, but yeah, I won't ruin too much. But before we start jumping into everything,
now time to log off. I mean, you said everything. We got everything done. No.
This is what I learned from TikTok Live. You gotta throw some bait out there, give people stuff that they want to listen for. So
let me see who else we've got. We got some other folks tuning in. Looks like Long Island, New York. We've got Josh from Long Island. We've got Chad. Looks like from Rochester, New York. We've got I'm not sure who, but we've got Little Rock, Arkansas in here. We've got Delaware, I believe. I'm going by my state abbreviations here. You guys are testing me here. I haven't done this in a while. But hey, I want to say something though. I want to say something that's really cool, and I want to hear if you all want to do this. So if you're tuning in and you got the Advent calendar, we have a really exciting thing. And I was not really a part of putting together who was in the calendar and where they were placed, but people will know if they've looked already at what the sample is. So today we are talking about Beyke's Blue, which is a blue corn sample, which followed yesterday where we had Smoke Eye Hill blue corn as well. So we are going to dive in. We're going to talk about, and we're going to taste Beyke's Blue, but I want to hear if anyone still has Smoke Eye, if you all want to like collectively taste back and forth together and like kind of do this side by side. It's just a really cool opportunity. Some people I think already know, and they already had the Smoke Eye Hill because it, had a lot of talk about it over the last year. But for those who didn't, I think that's another one of those added cool opportunities. Aside from all the brands they got a chance to taste, they got to do an exact head-to-head. And from some of the reviews I was seeing from people who hadn't actually tried blue corn bourbon before. So I think that was pretty cool.
I want to say that was somewhat intentional. I don't know if it was fully intentional, but we wanted to put some
at
blue
least
corn
halfway
bourbon.
Intentional.
Yeah, back to back, so people kind of have a bit of a if they did save part of a comparison, or part of a sample, they can do a comparison between the two bottles. So yeah,
Clover Bourbon Mill said that Smoke Eye Hill was delicious. It is tasty. It is a tasty whiskey. It's hard to follow. So thanks a lot, Blake, in that one.
Yeah, no pressure. I hope that this one outdoes it. Which I think
I'm going to keep this coming up a while. So, or maybe, okay, I didn't click off it. So right here,
Bourbon Library just did a comparison of the Still Austin, Beyke's, and Smoke Eye Hill, but he did the 92 or the 93 proof Smoke Eye Hill.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a fun one.
Mike says cool to have him back to back. Like it's like Jordan 96, 97, right? Or it's not quite there.
Is that Jay-Z lyric? I think that's
Drake lyrics. More like it's probably
Drake.
Probably more like the Utah Jazz, like 92, 93, but it's fine.
You could be Malone. I'll be Stockton. I mean, I think
I'm here for it.
I think I'm here for it. That is also fine. But yeah, let's
here he goes. Look at this. See the Rockets. I'll take the Rockets 94, 95. That's fine. I'll take that too.
Who do they have? Rockets 94, 95. That would have been Drexler, Hakeem Olajuwon. Who else was on that? Who was the guard? I can't think of right now.
That's the reason I went there, Mike. That's the reason I went there.
Actually, let's just I know we're going to do a whiskey tasting here. Let's test our Kenny Smith. There you go. Let's just test our knowledge on 90s NBA and let's see what we can come up with. Yeah.
I think it'd be better if not.
Kenny Smith has had a better post NBA career, but Sam Cassell was the man back in the day. So and then let's try to get all these people on for tasting the next year advent calendar. Like, what's Sam Cassell up to these days? Would he like to come on and talk whiskey? I don't know.
Surely, look, I've been trying to get Blake forever. I was like, man, we need to get some of the Jags, to like do a thing with us. We got
on a streak right now. They're busy. They are busy in the month of December.
I mean,
we're not going to.
I'm not bad about it, but in the off season, we gotta get TL and say, my guy, let's do something,
Yeah. That's we'll see what happens this year. I'm 400 yards away from the stadium. I could strategically place some bottles in players' cars to try to drag them out for some bourbon tasting. We did a Blake Bortles release at one point. I feel like we can bring that back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's dive in. So Beyke's Blue. So this for those who don't know, this is batch 1 that you have from the first release we did back in August, I believe. And so I'll let Brian intro it. It's a blue corn bourbon and tied into. If you are watching this and don't watch anything else, Seelbach, Brian's last name is Beyke, and so yeah, take it from there, Brian. How did we come up with this product, or how did you come up with this product, and what does it mean to you, and why do we have this sample in the bottle today?
I mean, can I get into some of the stuff that I haven't shared before? I think I only jumped on one person's live. I did one with Scott from My Bourbon Journey, and so I haven't actually had a lot of chance to do some chatting about this, but to take
I
away
think that's the
a little
purpose
bit.
of this live today is for you to share what you have not shared before.
I mean, taking a little bit of the mystique away first, and then we'll get into more of the mystique. This is a project that we had talked about for a while. So for anyone who doesn't know, with Seelbach, I do a lot of the content. So I work on a lot of the emails, and I take a lot of the pictures of stuff, and do video content as well. But also doing like taste profiles and going out and doing single barrel picks, as does Blake, as does D. And we're trying and hoping and wanting to, keep leaning into doing more with our partners. And then, I think coming out of that, it just moved. And that's funny. It just felt natural to finally move into doing a project. I feel like there is just something, I mean, one, aside from just having a brand, but two, there's something different about being able to fully control all the things for something that, like, when you're working with a partner, right, and you're picking a single barrel or even working on a blend, you just don't really get a chance to do that. Oh, it's commenting on from both sides. That's kind of interesting. I wonder why it's doing that. I'll take it. So the funny thing about this is, when the opportunity came up to do this and to work with these blue corn barrels too, it was actually like a combination of, as we're talking about the project before it fully realized itself, that I don't know why it's doing the doubles. That's funny.
Oh, I thought you posted it's a Christmas miracle too, and I'm like,
it's because you're commenting from in here, which is going to comment back from both of our. That makes sense. At first, I didn't know. Okay. But it's funny because I actually got, I don't think I would have actually called anything after my name before. But you and my buddy Michael kept calling
a part of my.
Kept calling the project, Beyke's Blue. It's a blue corn, so we're gonna call it Beyke's Blue. And the reason why I say that too, I think after a while, I just kind of just said, yeah, well, let's just stick with it. Let's go with this. But I thought it was really funny because I remember talking to somebody right before it released, and they're like, oh man, like, for him to call the product after his own name, he must be really, really proud of it. Is that he's like putting his stamp of approval that it's got to be good. And I was like, dang, that's actually a lot of pressure I didn't plan to specifically set up for myself. That said, I'm really, really happy with the product, and I'm really, really happy that we get to share it together. And I say that too because there are two parts of the story, right? The first part of the story is kind of an ode to my family, which sounds cheesy a little bit, but before getting into whiskey, my dad's been into whiskey for a long time. My dad was in the Air Force, and he had a bunch of Air Force buddies, and that's what they do, is they got together and they went down the Bourbon Trail. But I wasn't that big into it, and there weren't a whole lot of things that my dad and I got along like with, or like saw eye to eye or whatever. But when I started getting into whiskey, then we started to bond over that. He passed away a couple of years ago, but like, he always thought like that was like one thing that I felt like we got to share together. So having the opportunity to do this, and even deeper than that, is that where we got these barrels from is a distillery that he had shown me that Beyke family supplies corn to. At the time that these barrels were laid down, talking with some different folks in the family, I have heard that Beyke Farms was bringing. Now this is like my dad's cousin's side, like my dad's side of the family, right? So not something that I'm necessarily close to. So like those details were like something I didn't necessarily know, but I had heard that we were delivering anywhere from 14 to 16 trucks of corn a week. And it took a while to get that. The running joke with you and I was like, year over year, I kept being like, hey, what does this mean? Like, is all the bourbon coming out from our family is 1/100th of a batch, like from our family? I didn't know. And trying to reverse do some math, it looks like around the time these barrels were laid down, that Beyke was probably supplying about 10% of the corn. And anyone who's familiar with Seelbach actually probably has had a truer taste of something I would call Beyke's, if you're familiar with the Seelbach we did. Another thing that has a little bit of taste there, but that's kind of one half of the story, which is like the family tie-in, being able to know that now. I mean, transparently, my family produces yellow corn. So blue corn is not like, this is not my family's heirloom blue corn, but through trying to year over year find out more and more about my family's involvement in the whiskey industry, kept us close to where we got this whiskey from. And the second part about that was just being able to do something with blue corn, like we tasted yesterday with the Smoke Eye Hill. You know, I've been, Mike's in the channel, he knows as well. You know, I've found not a ton, but the brands that have had blue corn whiskeys out in the market, I've really enjoyed. I really like the Still Austin Blue Corn Bottled and Bond. I've been following that last couple of years of releases. Love the like pretty top notes it has, the pretty fruit notes that it has, and it just has just a little something different. And I thought the Smoke Eye Hill was similar in that regard, but I found it a bit surprising that there weren't a lot of Kentucky blue corns on the market. Bluegrass Distillers is another one that does a blue corn, and I believe it's Bottled and Bond, comes out once a year. And so I thought it was a really nice opportunity for us to, the reason I decided to continue to roll with the name of Beyke's Blue is like, I actually didn't think that the name made that big of a deal. I just wanted to do something different if we could, right? Like if I'm going to put something out there, I want it to be something that is accessible, hopefully on the price point, that's hopefully available for people to be able to grab, and that provided something unique to the market. And a long story to get there, but I think we succeeded with that with batch one.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit of my own context of the behind the scenes of this, but so I knew the story. Me and Brian had talked about his family's connection to this distillery in Owensboro for a while, and obviously Brian does an incredible job with all the media and everything else, and he's being very modest with how his palate affects everything we do and all of that. And we had these samples come to us. Shout out Ron Miles over at Lofted, and I'm like, Brian, this is amazing. It's blue corn. You love blue corn. You're always talking about blue corn, and it's always in your top, 3 favorites or 5 favorite videos. And now we have it with a distiller you have a connection with. Let's name it Beyke's Blue. He's like, that kind of puts the emphasis on me too much. I don't know. I'm like, that's the point. Like that, you are the foremost authority on really good bourbon in this blue corn bourbon, and you have this family connection to it. Why would we not name it that? He's like, I don't know. We'll see. And I think it took a friend doing a little chat GPT of potential labels, and you were like, okay, that
looks pretty cool. Now, let it be said too, though, I had no other names in consideration at the time. Like it's not also
you were trying your best to have some better alternative, and this does happen a lot. I mean, we're kind of going through this right now with a potential brand of like idea or spinoff, whatever you want to call it, of like, well, we could do this, but maybe that's a little too on the nose, and maybe that could, rub some people the wrong way. And so it is something that comes at times, but I feel like you just didn't have anything else that worked nearly as good as calling something Beyke's Blue. And it just is kind of the perfect tie-in for something like that. And that's kind of how we got here. And well, I don't know. You kind of called me out for saying I gave too many details out earlier, but I'll talk about the whiskey a little bit that's in everybody's glass today. So this isn't cask strength. We've had a lot of discussions back and forth internally of proofing stuff down versus stuff being cask strength, and I love cask strength whiskey. I will say, like, it is how I typically would drink something. And the example we were talking about the other day was like, is cask strength whiskey just like the Hello Fresh of the bourbon world? Like, here's all the ingredients. All you need to make this a good meal is 4 pans, 45 minutes, a grill, and everything else to actually have a good meal. Or is that responsibility really on the brand or distiller or master blender, whoever it is, to proof it down, get it to that right point? So we went through a ton of iterations, especially on this first batch, to say, where does this drink best? And when we got these samples in or got the barrels in, started pulling samples, I've never had a whiskey that really changed or transformed more in the glass with some water added to it than this one did. Not to say that it wasn't good at cask strength, it just did not highlight everything that was great about it at cask strength. Like it was a little muted, it was a little more spice forward, and then you start adding in a little bit of water, and it's like, oh my gosh, this thing just evolves, and it's like super perfumed and fruity and everything else. So I think it's probably the first thing we've done proof down outside of the weeded under kind of the Seelbach white labeled side of things. And so we landed on 111, but that was, I mean, that was a lot of tests back and forth of what proof should it be, what type of water. I even sent Brian a sample pack of, I think it was 5 different types of water that I had proofed things down with, all to the same proof, to see what we thought the best water should be. And at one point we got so caught up in what's best. I think I played a trick on him, and I sent him 3 samples. 2 of them were the same thing. And sure enough, he was like, yeah, 2 and 3 are really good. I'm like, neck and neck. I don't know if I noticed a difference between the 2 of them. So whatever 2 or 3 is, I think is the winner. I'm like, well, son of a gun. It's the exact same thing, Brian. You're supposed to like
Well, anyway, yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't mind hitting on that a little bit. I don't know if anyone, if there's enough people in the chat who would chime in on that, but so that maybe it's a little different in this industry. And again, I'm not a flavor scientist, even though we did have some kind of conversations with one about that. But in my head, so I can't. Before this, I worked in coffee, and I did brewing competitions. I know other people who did too, and I know that you have to have certain filtration systems that are in the water that you use to brew coffee, not only for the machines, but also just in terms of how it will affect solubility, how it will affect perceived sweetness and softness. And so as we were doing this, as we're talking through flavors, I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if water added like can affect it the same way. And that was a rabbit hole that we did do some tests with, and it's still something that I personally believe that we could lean more into. We opted to streamline it for the first couple of batches, and I think that's fine, but it is something I find super intriguing, especially like the way that I think about it coming from the mindset. I think there's a lot more that we could dig into from that, but for the sake of it, there's a lot of back and forth. I think it was a little too much back and forth that for that Blake would have preferred. But I found these barrels, like you were saying, though, these barrels were super interesting, where it's like there's a ton of flavor at cask strength. And the one thing I realized, though, with them being blue corn barrels, I don't find this in everything, but I do like to test things out, whether it's a blue corn or not. And this is one that I felt like had a lot of, for lack of a better term, hardiness, right? There's a lot there, a lot of big, thick, full flavors and big fruitiness, but it did come with a little bit of bite. And when I put out a product, I was hoping to make something that somebody wouldn't drink it and be thinking about how old it is, right? This is 6.5-year product that you all are tasting. Everything's turning 7 years old in a month. And so from that on, it'll be 7+ years old. But I didn't want someone to taste it and think it's got to be 6 years old. It's got to be 7 years old. Not that you can't pinpoint what the age is. I just like a pour where you don't have you don't, that's not one of the things that you think about. You're just enjoying it for what it is. And so I felt that there's so much power to these barrels that they could take water. And I felt that there was a balancing point that we could find where it retained all of its positive attributes, but got rid of anything that I felt was a little bit harsh. And that was tough. It did work. We did do that. I think where it got hard was right at the very end where Blake was most annoyed with the back and forth, where it's like in batch ones, like even at 117, 119, the fruitiness popped more, but it still had a touch more bite than what it did. And so like trying to massage it to something where I felt like it was just drinking really, really well. Took a little bit of finessing, but I think we finally got there. And just for the record too, so where this one is proof wise, this is batch one that Blake's talking about. The other products that we have, we talk about being blended for balanced and bottled with the drinker in mind. So the goal is that every time we take a batch, we're going to be finding its optimal proof. Now, I think if it landed around that 111 or 113 or something like that would be nice. I think there's a happy spot there. But every time we work with barrels, we're going to come to its own. I don't know if you have more information as we're talking about this live on air, but I don't know if you have more information than I have about batch 2. But even where I was landing the plane for batch 2, we're actually closer to, what was it, like 116 or 117 or something like that. Just the
we're sitting like
could hold a bit more proof.
Yeah, we're sitting like 118 right now. I think that's a good spot. And I won't say annoyed. It was, hey, Brian, we're bottling in like 2 days, so we got to make a final decision on if we're adding more if we're adding
Absolutely.
more water or not. But yeah, with batch 2, so it started at 128.6. I think I have the sample here around here.
And if you guys are drinking, let me know what your all's thoughts are. Feel free to. I already have mine poured, so feel free, everyone else, to pour yours out too. If you guys are tasting, I'd love to hear your all's thoughts.
And and we kind of have this philosophy of you can shock the whiskey if you just try to drop it so much in proof so quickly. You know, there's a lot of science behind that it's a thermogenic reaction. It can bruise some of the flavors, all this stuff. So we're trying to slowly proof it down, you know, maybe take it down 2-3 proof points at any given time, let it sit for a few days, maybe a week, then bring it down another 2 to 3 points. And so with batch 2, we're right around 118 right now. And we also, with these, when we're proofing stuff down, it's like barrel aged water. So we'll take a freshly dumped barrel, we'll fill that up with water, let that sit for a few weeks, and then start proofing down with that. So everything just mingles together a little bit better. And, you know, worst case scenario, you're amplifying with a little bit of the flavor of that X barrel that's in the water, but it's not necessarily something that has a proof to it. So yeah, this is a super fun one because I think it's an exercise that we don't typically do. You know, a lot of the stuff that we put out, it's, hey, how does it taste right now? Is it great at cask strength? Is it combining with the correct barrels and blending? And this is just that next layer of, all right, we've got what we want. Now let's find the perfect proof. Trademark that if it's not done already. But
as
just
15 stars like to say flavor proofing, but we're not saying flavor proofing.
We're not saying flavor proofing, but there is something to that. And I mean, I think 15 stars does a great job with that, with how they proof whiskey as well, of just finding that point where everything's still highlighted. And I still go back to, I was talking with a master blender one time and talking about evaluating whiskey, and they were saying that, you know, they'll proof stuff down to 70 proof when they're evaluating barrels, because that's when all the flaws really show. And if you're drinking something at cask strength, a lot of flaws can be covered up in the proof. You know, it numbs your palate, numbs your senses. You're not getting everything that's in that whiskey. Now, legally, you can't put something out at 70 proof, but that's where a lot of these brands and distilleries are evaluating the whiskey to decide if it is ready, if it's not ready, because there's nothing to hide when it's there. And while we don't want to drop it down that low, like we still like a higher proof, it is nice to start to peel some of those layers back and say, are we hiding something just by throwing it out at 130 proof? And that's what it is. Um, but
And to
yeah,
be honest, I
great.
really do appreciate. I mean, not to necessarily play off of like similar terminology, but I really do appreciate 15 Stars approach to it. In what they're talking about really trying to find, the ideal place where that flavor stands. And so when it was something like this, and you and I were going back and forth, could it go lower proof and appeal to folks? I think so. We were trying to find a proof that's like, what would get a regular drinker room to step up a little bit more, have a little bit more to it, but would still have enough punch to drink well for somebody who will drink cask strength. That we wanted to find something that was like threading in the middle. Real quick, we got Chad over here on Instagram saying really enjoying it. Yesterday was the first blue corn he had tried. Today was the second. Was talking about this black raspberry note that comes through. Had never picked that up before. I want to go back and hit on one thing just real quick. So I don't want to forget that this one here about does the lower starch and blue corn impact yields or proof? Proof, not exactly sure. But yields, yeah. So like, I mean, that's a part of the reason why the yellow corn is so popular, is because it can just, the starch just really gets going. And you will see stuff like that in other heirloom corns as well. Just sometimes it could be flavor, but other times I think it's just about production and like in its ability to to work well in that process, the distillation process. And then this comment here talking about the different types of water used. I'm not going to go too long on that right now because I feel like we can go for a long time, but trying to go back to the things that I was thinking of in the coffee side of things. So I would generally assume if you have something that has like a perceived spiciness, not trying to necessarily like mask it in any sort of way, but I have to feel like a softer water could potentially soften the spiciness, right? Or like sometimes we would notice in coffees, I feel like there's got to be some type of water profile that would bring forward or lift up perceived sweetness over bitterness or over like sourness, like some other thing. So we played around with a few, and specifically, like I think if some people are using, it's one of the things we ran through in coffee is that like if you don't want to just use like RO water or something that's not re-mineralized afterwards, or else you get a lot of dryness, you get a lot of flatness. And so you want to make sure whatever the water you're using does carry some mineralization into it, to the point that I was even wondering, hey, do we just ship limestone water, like to get, use limestone water to proof that down at all, to kind of get just maybe a smoother, natural kind of flavor profile. Again, we didn't dig too much into it. I still think I can get a little bit nerdier about it and find something that's like, hey, it actually even takes a natural flavors that's in a whiskey and can balance it differently because of the type of water you're using. So anyway, I just, we'll see. Again, I'm not a flavor scientist, so someone else could jump in here, and I bet someone will in the replays and be like, actually, that's not how flavor works. But maybe.
Although I will say I do like seeing the comments of what people are getting. Somebody said they're getting Granny Smith apples, sweeter dessert-like notes, which is all things we talked about within proofing this down and blending it. We wanted those to be highlighted. But yeah, before we get too deep in, let's hear it from the man himself. Like, what do you get whenever you pour this sample fresh tonight? Like what are some of the things that you get and you enjoy having them in the glass?
Like you said early on with this pour, it is something that you and I have gone back and forth about a lot, which is depending on when I have this in a tasting lineup, or maybe even sometimes the night. Like I do feel like this pour can change a lot. Some people may not like that. Some people do like that, but I do think it changes from time to time, but I still would always come back to it. Now, this is a 70-21-9 mash bill. So as much as we want to draw out the fruitiness, it still has 21% rye, which is a fairly high rye content. It's not the highest, it's still fairly high. So to me, I love the mouthfeel. I think it has a big mouthfeel, especially having so much brought down with the water. And then to me, it reminds me of like Grader's black raspberry chip ice cream. And so it's kind of have that kind of profile to it. I like the darker baked, maybe not quite stewed fruits, but more like baked pie type fruit notes. that are in there. It has a bit of the caramel. People who follow me know that I hate talking about cinnamon in a whiskey, but I do feel like it's got some spice in here too. Again, just like as a profile for myself, I'm a big roses drinker, so I do actually find it comical sometimes that I will say that I try that like cinnamon is like a note that bothers me, but I also drink very high rye content whiskeys, sometimes. But I wanted something that had layers that someone who wanted to find them could find, but also is just got a lot of really interesting flavors to somebody who is just getting started or doesn't want to, feel like they have to be challenged by the whiskey. So I think it's got a really nice bouquet on the nose. That's what I've noticed in all blue corn products, right? It's what I've noticed in the Smoke Eye. It's what I noticed in Still Austin, where I would say a little floral, a little maybe herbaceous is more proper to call it, but it has still a lot of darker fruit notes. There's maybe a little strawberry. There's like a black raspberry. There's like a Dr. Pepper kind of note, but not maybe as sweet as some can be. And then moving into the palate, someone I watched a video earlier was talking like a lemon cake or lemon bar. And I get that a little bit more tonight. It's got this kind of caramel meets lemon meets darker, like kind of what I call blue purple fruit notes. And I think it's really fun. There's no knocking. There's tons of yellow corn whiskeys that we like, but what I like about it is it does sit itself a bit, not quite earthy, but it is a bit darker of a profile that gives a change from all of the vanilla caramel butterscotch that a yellow corn whiskey can be. It doesn't have like the kettle corn notes or something like that like a slightly younger yellow corn whiskey can have. Just a little bit darker than that.
Well, that's what I think we could also just say is blue corn is better than all other yellow corn bourbons on the market.
I remember talking to somebody. I remember talking around to somebody at Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and I was trying to sample a guy on a pour of it. Another guy walked on and was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And I'm like, "Well," and all this.
Come on in.
I was like, "Well, I'm tasting this bourbon." He's like, "What is it?" I was like, "Well, it happens to be my bourbon, sir." And then it became this whole thing about going back and forth with him. But I was like, "Look, there's no." It's great to compare blue corns, but like, and no one's done this, so it's not like somebody said anything, but like, I welcome more blue corns on the market because that would be like saying you could only have 5 yellow corn bourbons. That would like, where would the industry be if it's like, nope, sorry guys.
Limit
one bourbon per distillery. No
NDPs. Corn.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it is. I think it's an exciting thing. I think it's interesting. And I think it is a little bit different.
Yeah. And that's where I think this, your product fits so well into what we're constantly saying is nobody knows what the best bourbon is. At the end of the day, everybody can have their favorites, but we don't know if the best bourbon is at a certain age, if it's a certain climate, if it's a certain mash bill, if it's a blend of different distilleries. And I feel like the blue corn side of things just fits so well into you like what you like, but let's keep exploring and try to figure out how things are better and what makes them better. And, that's why we have so many different bottles on Seelbach, because if we were to say, nope, guys, good news, we already found our favorite. It is 8-year to 10-year Kentucky bourbon from this distillery. That gets really boring really quick. And, that's why I was so excited to have this product on the site, just because it gives somebody different. It's another cool story. It's another kind of just small, it's nothing crazy like, oh, we went and smoked the corn and put it in cab and Amburana barrels. It's no crazy kind of wrinkle to that extent, but it's just like, could blue corn bourbon make something better? And, I think about it from, I buy I buy way too many things in general, but buy from a bunch of different producers like Marsham Farms and others, where you get different types of grits, and it's like you've got red corn grits, you've got blue corn grits, you've got Whitestone corn, and you can taste the flavor difference in that corn of what makes it better. And same with cornbread. I've talked with Alan Bishop over just a fantastic master distiller. He's like, if it doesn't make good cornbread, it's not going to make good bourbon. And you almost just kind of, I don't want to say distill it down because that's a little too on the nose, but you bring it back to that. Like if it makes good cornbread, it's probably going to make good whiskey. And I bet the blue corn would make a fantastic whiskey just because it is a very flavorful corn. The grain has some more nuances than just yellow dent corn. And it's just another story that's fun to tell and get people excited about like what that product can be, what it is now, what it could be in multiple years. Here's the alley-oop, what it could be with some double oaking. And
absolutely. I mean, so I got three things that you got on my mind. First one, this comment right here. See, this is what I love, because like what I love about it is its creaminess and its viscosity. And this is knowing that we proofed it down and it still retained all of that like fullness to be able to try even at like an accessible proof point. But yeah, what Blake's he hit on two things. He talked about continued aging, which, that's one thing I'm excited. These barrels taste great. And I mean, I can't wait. I'm like, man, once we hit like a 10-year blue corn, like what's that going to be like? Right. I think that's going to be exciting. But what Blake was setting up for is what the next product is that we have coming up with Beyke's. It's releasing later this week on Seelbach, which is our first round of double oaked. So for folks who don't know, we've been doing the Advent calendar, right? And so we have several lives tasting through the Advent calendar, but also for 3 years in a row now for Seelbach, we've been doing 12 days of 12 days of bourbon or 12 days of whiskey, where we do like 12.
3 years in, we haven't settled on what we're actually going to call those 12 days. It just changes.
But we basically do a drop a day of like some like cool things, or like some things that we've saved up, or like re-releases of things that were popular. And I think this has been our best year yet. And we've been putting some really, really fun things in this. And as you announced in the weekly email for anyone who's on the Seelbach newsletter, every Sunday we do a digest of like what we released or what's coming up. And two big things are coming up to close out the 12 days of whiskey. The return of Seelbach 15 year, which a lot of people are excited for. I've been watching the signups for back in stock. And then we're doing a special batch of double oaked blue corn for Beyke's Blue, which I'm excited for multiple levels. One, because I think it's fantastic. And two, because I don't know of another double oak blue corn that's on the market. So like we're trying to hit that. And we wanted to do kind of a smaller batch, special batch to kind of pilot doing this. It lets us to get some feedback about it too. It is also fantastic, but then it allows us to be able to do another thing special for the 12 days. So yeah, that's, I mean, do you want me to like kind of dive into what that is while we're here, or just wait, let people wait?
I don't know. I feel like if you're on the live at 9:43 on a Sunday, you should get some special information. Like,
well, let's do it then. I'm gonna tell you guys this. Well, again, I try not to talk too highly about it. I always am kind of the person that's like, hey, if it's good, like I would expect someone else to do the talking about it. If there's enough whiskey nerds out there and there's a good product, they'll be able to tell it. I don't have to say it myself. But I'll kind of quote Blake, because he was talking about it the other day and saying that this is the double oak Beyke's is one of the favorite things he's had all year long. And he previously had said that about just Beyke's Blue. So I'm going to trust in his consistency.
I don't think I told you that to your face, though. I think I said that.
No, you never would. You never would. And you don't have to here. You don't have to admit it here either. But anyway, so I will say, I believe that Beyke's double oak is going to be coming in at 119 proof, but it drinks like it's 105. I mean, it drinks really, really well. And I think has a really, really unique flavor, not only because of the blue corn, but so what we did here is we had some remainder of what we had put together for batch one that had already been proofed where it was. And we threw that back into a Speyside barrel. And I think the Speyside barrel tastes really nice on its own. It has a lot of spice notes, like they're like more French oak kind of spices, like the warming spices and all these things that come out of it. And then we blended that with a Zach Cooperage barrel. We've been using a lot of stuff from Zach Cooperage. Love what they're doing. I mean, to me, Zach's like a not Kelvin type profile where you get really bold, big flavors. And so we had a barrel that as soon as we got them early in the year, we threw into Zach, and it's a huge profile. And then the last time we tasted through all the barrels, I selected one that I said, we want to use this for the batch. It's a 3-barrel blend, an unfinished, a Speyside, and a Zach. And the combination of, I mean, they're all tasted good on their own, but the combination of the 3 of them together, I think, gives a really, really fun double oak profile. It gives the kind of fullness that, like, in my head, it's like a snapshot of what this blue corn can be when it's older. Mm-hmm. In fact, I brought this out blind with some guys drinking last night. And one of the closing things, one of them said, super creamy, really like this, probably double oaked. But the other one's like, look, it does a lot of different things. I wouldn't be surprised if you told us this is some 15-year-old whiskey, and I'd believe you. So, like, I'm not going to promise that it tastes like a 15-year-old whiskey, but I think it brings a lot of richness, a lot of fullness, and more materializes what I love about the flexibility of blue corn. And I think it's going to be a very, very fun blend. That's dropping on Thursday.
Yeah, and I think that was a fun thing about that blend. And it was 3 components. So for me, the Zach Cooperage double oaked, it adds like this vanilla custardy creme brulee type of finish on things, which is just, I love those notes. Like, I would just have everything with those notes if it was my own personal for drinking side of things. And the Speyside, it's more richness. It's kind of that traditional, what I think of double oak flavors. And then the barrel we ended up selecting, it was just very heavy and like the fruitier, the Granny Smith apples, all of those things. And when we put that blend together, sitting where I am sitting tonight, actually, and I'm like, we've hit it. Like this is the blend, like this is what people will expect. And it's also what's going to kind of shock people a little bit, that it is 6 years, 10 months or something like that. And I think that blend just turned out fantastic because it took all the great components of blue corn, double oaking, blending, proofing, and kind of work them all together. So I'm really excited for that. I don't
Looks like my buddy Chris just joined on the Instagram live. I'm not sure if he's still here, but he got to try it for the first time. I blinded him on it. He was in town. So, and he had put the regular Beykes that everyone else is just tasting if they're from the Advent calendar in a blind. He sent me a picture. He put this in a blind with, I'm trying to remember what else was in there, but I know the Old Rip was in there. And he said that the guy had picked Beykes as his favorite out of that. So, like, ooh. I'm not saying it, but if Minnick wanted to take the title, the bourbon that
that's our email for Thursday is bourbon.
I'm not writing that email. You could write that. I'm not going to write that headline.
The bourbon that beat Pappy in a blind tasting. That's
so Fred.
Yeah, that is the one. But no, I mean, even I guess we should say, so you are drinking batch 1. We do have batch 2 pretty close to ready to go. We're hoping to have some of them ready to go for Thursday. Don't hold us to that. There's a few minor logistical things to figure out on the back end. But we'll hopefully have some. And yeah, I hope everybody's enjoying this one. And I think it's just another one of those things where it's like it's a labor of love. We put a ton of work and effort. And I meant to start the show out with like, hey, Brian, give everybody a little bit of your backstory of how you got into bourbon in here, because I do think it hits on like a lot of different elements that make you perfectly suited for what you're doing today. But I know you mentioned the coffee, but do you want to give that in a little bit of a live stream of between, well, I won't ruin the surprises, but of kind of how you got into bourbon, how you got into this role and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to fill me in if you're thinking of things that I forget. But yeah, historically, I wasn't necessarily a whiskey drinker eh, before uh, moving back to Louisville about a decade ago. Um, and when I did move back to Louisville, it's when I took the job at the coffee roastery that I took at the time. And as I was like analyzing for the roastery, how do you bring people in to the cafe? We were trying to model it after people who were coming in for bourbon tourism. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to model anything after people for bourbon tourism if I don't know much about bourbon, whiskey, and tourism. I was more into cocktails at the time, and I just like flavor. I like describing flavor. And at the coffee shop, so I was a greens buyer at the roastery that I was at, but I also did marketing communication stuff too. So, all day, every day, I was building blends. I'm tasting coffees, I'm tasting samples, trying to figure out what to bring in for the lineup and doing tasting notes. I mean, the same kind of things that I do here. And um, I remember I had a buddy who started like kind of slowly letting me try some various whiskeys. And then, I kind of wonder like how things would have looked if I wasn't set in Louisville. I mean, Louisville is it is the easiest place, I should say, if you want to start learning about whiskey. And I will say too, for anyone else who might be in these shoes, like when I first got started, it seemed like an industry I could never learn about. Wine's kind of the same way. Like coffee, there was a lot to learn, but like I felt like I kind of quickly kind of picked up on some things. But whiskey seemed like a thing you just could never learn everything about. There's so many distilleries. There's so much information. What's a mash bill? And then one place has 90 of them. And then there's another place. Like, how do you ever learn all this stuff? And then, I mean, with time, it just kept happening. I think that happens when you have, what's my wife call it? OCD or a addictive personality, things like that. Yeah, and so I started doing that. I had a buddy who another colleague in coffee. His name was Drew. Had a channel, Drew P Whiskey. Some folks in here might be familiar with that. And he asked if I wanted to do a podcast with him. So two coffee guys who liked whiskey doing a whiskey podcast, and that's what we started doing. But the funny thing is, he had already had a channel, and people kind of followed it. And I was like, I don't have anything. It's like, here's Drew P Whiskey and the guy who joins Drew P Whiskey on the shows. And so I was like, well, I got to do something. And so I started just trying to do like what I did in the coffee industry, tasting things, describing things in language. And one of my biggest things, and one of the first things I even did for Seelbach, was help put together like a flavor descriptor chart. Because to me, I think one of the things that can seem super overwhelming is trying to describe whiskey. However, I think the thing that lowers that barrier a little bit is when you just explain to everybody that everyone has their own, what I call like tasting languages. And the goal is not to be right? The goal is that you figure out how you taste and describe things, and your goal is just to do that consistently. Whatever flavor you might call cherry or candied orange, that every time you hit it, you call it that. And I did this with coffee all the time, because we'd bring clients in and they're trying to taste through the collections of coffee to figure out what they might like in their cafe, and they're like, I don't know how to describe it. I'm like, look, I don't need you to know how to describe it. My job is I'm the translator here. So you tell me when you're tasting side by side, do you like one more than the other? Is one darker than the other? Is one sweeter than the other? Is one smoother than the other? And by you describing in whatever your language it is, I process that in everything that I know in my head, and we communicate. We figure out what that same language is and how to figure out exactly what you like. And I want to do that same thing in whiskey, right? I can use a lot of words when I taste, but the goal at the end of the day is that whatever you taste it the way you taste it. I taste it the way I taste it, and we translate what that is to shared experiences. That's what it is. So, that's you. We met through when I was doing stuff with Drew, and then just early on in Seelbach, and we've kind of like followed alongside each other for a little bit. I kind of jumped on, I think almost 5 years ago, doing a little bit of part-time stuff with you as well. And then have been, I don't even remember, 2.5, 3 years, something, 2.5 years, I think, full time in the space, just being Yeah, doing that. Did I miss something that you were thinking of that I didn't hit on?
I mean, I think, I think the coffee is a huge piece of bringing in because, I imagine people who are listening to this, like you've probably been to a barrel pick, you've probably been to whatever. And the thing that I've always loved and respected about coffee and coffee people and roasteries and whatever else it is just like the cupping process of like, hey, this is a standardized process. This is what we do. We try it at these different temperatures. We try it at these different steeping. I'm not a full-on
That's
coffee
okay.
guy. And saying like, okay, now let's try it now. Let's see what we like. And I think that is a big part of what has gotten, kind of embedded into Seelbach is like, we need to sit down with these samples. We need to try them here. We need to go through. And I think that's what kind of led into a lot of this of like, it felt like more of a coffee um development process of when we got into the water, when we got into the different barrels and everything else of like, what are we going for? You may call it green apple, I may call it tangerine, but it's still a brighter, fruitier note. That's what we're both going after. Okay, cool. Is it more elevated with water? Is it less elevated? And I think that whole process really helps out a lot. I was going to try to get you to talk about the gaming days because I haven't heard you
Oh, I
talk
can
about
do that
it
too.
publicly, but no, I won't.
Yeah.
We'll save that
No,
for
no, no.
another.
Yeah, we can say that for no, but the what you bring up is actually a really interesting point too, because one of the things I always found interesting with coffee and what I had to communicate to like people on the team, like our job is to do, we have to continue to do as well of a job as possible, continuing to carry everything through at an excellent level, because in coffee, when you deliver the coffee to like the cafe to serve, that's not the final step, right? Or if like even selling a bag of coffee on the shelf, that's not the final step. The customer takes it and they could brew it poorly or they could brew it well. The barista still has to take the coffee and brew it poorly or brew it well. Like the thing that's awkward about coffee is that you actually don't get delivered the final deliverable. Someone still has to, up into the very end, continue to tweak manually to a final deliverable, right? But yeah, I've got a background in board gaming. I got a background in craft chocolate and in all these things though, right? You're presenting a deliverable finalized. Whiskey is a deliverable finalized, but that even goes back to the point that you were mentioning about like why I wanted to proof it well, because I feel like leaving something sometimes at cask strength is like that still having to deliver thing at the coffee shop. It's like, yeah, you can serve it like this, but is it the way that it was intended to be served? Well, you don't quite know unless you hit it right. And so sometimes I just think taking something and finding where its proof is hitting well is being thorough in carrying it out to the end, so that somebody has to open it and they don't have to add water if they want to, which you still can, but you don't have to, because it's ideally where it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about, do they have good water? Is their machine hasn't been cleaned out in 6 months? Like, does their grinder suck? Whatever else it could be in coffee, it's like you're
And I do
giving
not
them
recommend putting Beyke's Blue through your grinder. Okay, just as a heads up, don't do it.
Although I will say, I did prepare myself. I did sample of batch 2 on my desk. Is at
Oh
118.8
man.
proof currently. And Chris Chanot jumped in the chat a little bit. So if he wants to send notes as well, it's very much like batch 1. It just gives a little more of like almost more traditional, I would say, notes. Like you get a ton of that fruitiness, but at 118, like you still get really good caramel. You still get really good vanilla. And this is tasting really good. I mean, it's a lot of the just I'm thinking like apple pie almost, like just a touch of cinnamon on top, like a buttery crust, stewed apples, a lot of really good things going on in that sample. So I'm excited for that one too.
Yeah, so for anyone, I mean, I know that we're an hour into the stream, so like no one knew is necessarily popping in, but if anyone did, so I have the QR code that's over here. It does take you to the Seelbach Advent Calendar page, and on there's a browsable bar that has the products that are in. So if you liked something throughout, and people who have the book, so when you go through, if you have the Advent Calendar, you have the book, there's QR codes that are in the pages, and they'll take you to those products too. As of right now, batch 1 of Beyke's Blue did sell through. But again, for anyone who didn't catch it, we have the double oak batch that is planning to drop. And then we do have batch 2 also in the works as well. So fret not, go to the page, sign up for like the alert me when back in stock kind of thing. And you'll be notified as soon as that product's available if you were wanting to grab one of these two.
Yeah. Well, we were already at a full hour. Like, we got to the tasting notes, didn't we? Didn't we do the part that we were supposed to do? But
Absolutely,
I don't know. I think this side of things is even more fun for people to kind of hear what happens. You know, me and Brian are just two guys, but somehow we ended up developing brands and developing products. And I love that about what we do at Seelbach, because I feel like not a lot of people are jumping on to just talk about exactly what went into it and why they made the decisions they made, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I won't.
Chris over here,
make an
I'm
example,
imagining he's talking about the double oak. He said, I'm no good with notes, but I liked it. We'll be buying multiple bottles. I think that's the double oak, but if not, we've got someone named Ella's dad Mike saying, I'm new. So, hey, Ella's dad Mike, welcome to the chat and welcome
Mike
to
Montgomery. Thanks for jumping in.
I'm kidding.
Hey, Mike, how do you feel?
Yeah,
Mike, I know it's another brand with the name Blue in it. I'm sorry. I do apologize.
Mike, I'm too fat to run. Okay, I don't need to.
But no.
Hey, good story with Mike. You know, funny that Mike's here. Okay, we want to talk about stories. So
we're not that deep into the drinks yet. We're not that deep into. I know we're.
You don't want me to talk about. You don't want me to talk about Mike? No, I remember one of my favorite stories. We were at Rest in Peace Expo.
And yeah.
We're having Acid Cats at Expo Bar in Louisville. One of our favorite things to do. And we were there with Mike, who's in the chat and on Instagram. And Blake leans over to Mike and says, Mike, how do I get this guy to come work for me? And I look over to Mike too, and I'm like, Mike, I'd really love to hear your answer to this question, considering this is my first time also hearing this request.
First formal offer that I have heard on
and then and from that day forward, the rest is history, right?
Yeah. You know, just all things need to all good business decisions need to happen at Expo Bar in Louisville, Kentucky. And was not my best formal HR approach to trying to recruit great talent to Seelbach. Was just
you don't
to be
regret
like,
it, though.
Hey,
don't regret it.
Yeah, we've been tasting things all day. You know, you're doing some contract stuff. Like, why don't you come work here full time? Why don't I say that to somebody else in the bar with us? And hey, it all works out in the end. That's all that matters.
Yeah, whatever happened to Jeff? No.
That is funny. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that story. Actually, I talked to Mike this week, so it was good to catch up with him. But yeah, everyone, we can. I feel like we could sit here and continue to do this for the next couple of hours. So I won't make everybody sit through our ramblings. But those who have the Advent calendar and joined in, thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for being a part of the Advent calendar. It's definitely something we're going to continue to do. And actually, we're back tomorrow night, and we can talk about that because I've got the Bourbon Community Roundtable at the same time. So you may be rolling solo on that one, but we've got Highwire, Scott and Ann from Highwire tomorrow, which will be so this is kind of planned. You know, we went blue corn. Tomorrow night will be red corn, and ask them.
Spoilers, Blake.
Oh shoot!
Spoilers.
Okay. Hopefully nobody's listening who is keeping the surprise up, but there is another tasting tomorrow night with a lot of fun questions, and Yeah, that'll be a good one. They know their stuff. They know the insides and out of production and corns, what does better. So a lot of the questions we're talking about tonight can also pop up tomorrow. So if you're listening,
Is Scott
and
going to be on that?
what's that?
Is Scott who
Yes,
else gonna be in? Man, I
Scott,
tell you,
my
one of
man.
my favorite conversations in whiskey is hearing him talk. So, enjoy, just come join in too, because I'd be really curious just to read. I had told you that too. I was like, man, we were there just chatting for about 3 hours, and I wish I had recorded the whole thing because he had dropped so many nuggets in the conversation, and I didn't get them all. But yeah, that'll be a really, really, really fun one tomorrow. And then aside from tomorrow, you can see it in the notes of all of our YouTube videos. For the rest of the month, we have tastings 8th, 11th, 17th, 19th, 21st, 22nd, and a pre-recording on the 24th.
I'm gonna
So
go live on the 24th. I may just have all of my kids and all of my
all of
nieces and
my
nephews
family
on the
jumping in
24th.
for the
Bring them all
3
in.
people who join us, and they're all Seelbach employees.
It's would we get banned from YouTube because like I've got 12 kids running around in the background? Maybe, but
I make it the circles. They're circles. No one will know. They're
yeah,
circles.
yeah. But yeah, no, this is fun. I've enjoyed this. So thank you all for joining us, and yeah, we will see you back tomorrow night.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.